Thank you, Dr. Ohye. You've got me a little bit choked up to start my talk now. That was extremely entertaining as well. So I'm going to continue on to talk about the 3D printed bioresorbable airway splint. And I'll focus a little bit more on the practicalities that we've been facing in innovating what is a breakthrough device. Rest assured, the challenges we're facing is far less shocking than Charles the Butcher had in the 40s. So it all started, as Dr. Ohye described earlier, with one patient and his clinician's belief that something better could be done for him. Working closely together with the professor of biomedical engineering, Dr. Scott Hollister, Dr. Green was able to give his patient exactly the treatment that he needed. Now, collaboration between surgeons and engineers is not something new, but being application specific, this makes translational research and the jump to product development a lot smaller. A lot of different pieces of the puzzle had to fit together to be able to produce the device in the situation that Dr. Ohye was talking about before. Amongst others, additive manufacturing machine capabilities and image processing capabilities had to be in a place where a platform could be used to build upon. The biomedical engineering department had been researching PCL material for a while and had figured out a great way to print this with the additive manufacturing technology that was available. They were also using the Mimics Innovation Suite to do their 2D to 3D conversions and essentially inform their splint design. Now, clinicians have to be involved because they're the ones that are going to tell us what the patient needs and how they're going to implant this device. The radiologists help devise the scan protocols that are used to feed into the whole process. And finally, as Dr. Ohye was saying, the FDA was involved in expediting reviews so these patients could have access to this device through the emergency use criteria. Now, you may have noticed I have an empty puzzle piece in the middle. Not sure if that's piqued your interest, but I'm going to tell you anyway. So what we've described here is really the situation that worked with the University of Michigan in a research and lab-like environment. And as Dr. Ohye said at the end, the goal is to be able to commercialize this so more patients everywhere are able to have access to this technology. And luckily, one of the pieces of this puzzle, that was us, we're already involved in this process as a software provider. And being in a position as a leading healthcare, a leading provider of 3D printed patient-specific devices, we were able to step in and take the product through our new product development process and essentially make it a commercially viable product. So this is where the collaboration has started, and we're in the process of that right now. It has been a very exciting product to take through our product development life cycle. So the splint has many requirements that it has to meet. Some of these are mechanical, they're surgical, they're biological. And essentially, we define what these are and we test against them to prove that we meet these requirements. Now, even in a standard situation, this is a pretty exciting project. For example, the splint has to be stiff enough that it holds the airway open for as long as it needs to. But it shouldn't be so stiff that it compromises growth. Now, for this specific project, it gets even more exciting because we've added many, many layers of complexity to this. It's patient-specific, it's additive manufactured, it's bioresorbable, and it's pediatric. Now, looking at this tiny image, it's hard to imagine how much work goes in on a case-by-case basis into making a patient-specific device. But not for us here, right? We know how much work it takes. I'm sure you've seen a slide similar to this over the course of the 2 days, but this is essentially the process of making a patient-specific device. You start with a scan and end up with a device that you can use in the operating room. So we too use a similar process, except that here we have 2 scans, an expiratory scan, so when they're breathing out and when they're breathing in, to be able to compare and essentially figure out what exactly the design parameters need to be able to make a splint that fits that specific patient. Now, there are many advantages to making a device patient-specific. First of all, it mitigates the one-size-fits-all issue. Now, for this particular population, that's extremely helpful because you're talking about various sizes due to age, due to severity of the condition, and possibly due to other diseases that these children might have. It also means that highly trained engineers are involved in every case. Now, this is great because it means you have a good outcome with every case that you do, but it also has to be a sustainable environment. Now, one of the main challenges is that the testing strategy has to cover all possible scenarios. And this is where we have to get quite creative. And essentially, we have to translate the fact that what we're designing is actually what we're building. And this is where additive manufacturing comes in. So first of all, we define the limits of the design space, build these parts, show that they meet this design criteria, and test those. Now, strict quality control has to go into place to be able to confirm that this is in fact happening, and process monitoring is occurring all across the flow. Now, the technology is mature, which makes this easier. We've been in this field for 25 years. We have a quality management system that works to meet these requirements. However, working with an additional material is a lot of work. Thankfully, in this story, that has been extremely easy because the University of Michigan had already done a lot of that foundational research work. So essentially, adopting PCL as a material into the 3D printing environment had been taken care of, and we were able to pull that into our workflow quite simply. So the material that was selected, a bioresorbable material called polycaprolactone, or PCL. So in the early 90s, actually, bioresorbable material research peaked, and there was an array of synthetic polymers to choose from. So for this specific device, as Dr. Ohye said, it needed to have the ability to support the airway for a couple of years so the children were able to outgrow their disease. So we looked for, we needed a material that would have a slightly longer resorption time than what's typically used in bioresorbable devices. Now, this also means that when we're looking at testing, you've got to look at the effects of how the products of degradation are affecting your patient over a longer period of time as well. So that adds some complexity. However, by selecting a material that's already widely used in the medical field, we're able to mitigate some of that. However, testing is still extensive, mainly because there is no exact precedent. Now, the FDA has said many times that they don't clear materials, they clear devices. So, for example, our material composition is specific to our device, and there may be one or two, or if at all, any devices on the market that have the same material composition. And equally, the anatomy in which we're placing the device is different. It is not anything. Essentially, what I'm trying to say is there is no extraluminal bioresorbable airway splint that is on the market right now. And that leaves us with no precedent to base off of. So bioresorbable materials have been used in other areas, and some of these include, actually last year the FDA cleared a fully bioresorbable cardiovascular stent, which is on the market at the moment and with good results. There have also been sutures and surgical meshes and scaffolds for bone fixation structure, but none of them are pediatric. So pediatric devices are often a little left behind in the medical device development world for a couple of reasons. One of them is that it's quite challenging to develop for. There is a lot of size variation within that population as well. They're younger, they're smaller, they're more active, and often suffer from longer-term effects of having a device in your body. So we have been able to mitigate some of these challenges by making the device patient-specific and by using a bioresorbable material. However, children will grow, and they will grow differently. And there is very little reliable data on airway growth out there, and so we must work within the confines of existing research. Now, it is a rare disease, and this is where the second reason that device development is often, pediatric device development is often behind adult products, is that there is limited financial incentive for companies to get involved. It is a rare disease within a small population, and so investing in developing what is essentially quite a complex product for a small volume of patients is not an easy business case to make. This, however, is a breakthrough device, and I think Dr. Ohye's speech clearly showed us the impact factor of what this provides, there is a great value proposition in what we are doing here, not just for patients like Kaiba, who is 5 years old in this picture, and enjoying a childhood he would never have had without the work at the University of Michigan, but also for the healthcare reimbursement system. A lot of these patients are ventilated for many, many days, weeks, months, and years of their lives. And so having the option to perform a single procedure after which they can be treated from home is a huge added value that drives the case for breakthrough device development. Now, this project has been extremely exciting and challenging and rewarding due to its many layers of complexity, but we are enthusiastically pursuing all avenues here at Materialise to be able to make this a reality. But we do not do this alone. All pieces of the puzzle have had to help in various different roles and ways to bring us to where we are today. For example, we're working very closely with the FDA to make use of their expedited access pathways for patients for breakthrough device development, in fact. We, as Materialise, we pride ourselves as being innovators, and it is this ecosystem that fuels innovation in a space like this. So essentially, this collaborative effort is what drives innovation in an exciting breakthrough space. And it is by keeping at the core of all of what we do, the quality of life of the patient, that we're able to launch a successful medical device. And that is more or less what I wanted to share with you today.